My name's Signe Wilkinson. I barely know the author, but I pulled the long straw and get to introduce her. And I was thinking about what she brings to us, and I'm just thinking, given the state of the world, with the Mideast in flames, Ukraine in flames, our own House of Representatives in flames, I am particularly glad to be introducing the author whose last book was titled, "Can't We Talk About Something a Little More Pleasant?" And really, what is more pleasant than flipping through the New Yorker magazine, skipping right over the shows you can't attend, the profound articles you'll definitely read tomorrow, the poetry that, as tonight's author once pointed out, gives the pages some welcome white space. And then finally, coming to a cartoon drawing of oddly weird but recognizable pastel-colored characters trying to unravel life's perpetual mysteries. One mystery to me is how she sleeps between drawing her cartoons, painting Ukrainian-style eggs, stitching cartoon tapestries, photographing standpipes. You don't know this, but she is the queen of standpipes. And seeing her two grandchildren. But when she does dream, when she does sleep, clearly she dreams. She thinks of her dreams as a sort of miraculous mystery, as you'll read in the book. And that's just how I like to think of our speaker tonight. Join me in welcoming the miraculous mystery, Roz Chast.
Hello. I think we're going to bring the house lights down just a little tiny bit. I'd like to start with this slide. I posted this to Instagram a while back, and a friend of mine said, "Is that your mother?" And sort of dubiously, and I said, "No, that's me. I'm 11." You know, I sometimes think about this picture, which looking back, I kind of like in this weird sort of way. This was like the swinging 60s. And, you know, the other kids in my class were wearing like mod clothes and like polka dot this and stripe that and whatever. And I'm dressed like I just stepped off the boat from Russia. And I had like so many different babushkas, you know, one for every mood, I guess, which generally veered from like depressed to scowling. I think my mother was afraid that like cold air would get in my ears, and that was like the worst thing that could happen. You could get a cold like inside of your head. That I don't know. Anyway. I'm going to show some cartoons. This is Pigeon Little. The sky is falling. The sky is, oh, look, part of Bagel. This is Liv. This is you didn't listen. A lot of times people ask me, like, where do you get your ideas for cartoons? And most of the time I don't really know, but this particular one did come from life. My daughter was doing her homework in the living room, and she was listening to some hip-hop music on a boombox, and, you know, there's nothing more disgusting in the eyes of a teenager than the adult human body. And I completely concur. I mean, but if you want to gild that lily of repulsion, all you have to do is do a little dance. And I just wanted to see, if she was paying attention. So I did this little dance, and she looked up and she said, "Mom, stop, you're hurting me." And it was so funny to me that I asked her if I could use it as a line, and she said, okay. So this is just, this, I don't know. In the cartoon universe, there are certain genres, and I do love the Grim Reaper as a genre. And everybody has their own way of drawing the Grim Reaper. I've noticed this is mine. Usually is something like this. This is antiques, collectibles, bric-a-brac, and garbage. And this is another genre I like, the tombstone. This is friends with actual benefits. Paperwork, bring it on. Lives to move your car from one side of the street to the other, and changing cat litter is his passion. This is in a just world, and. Yeah, I have some feelings about school. I don't know, my parents were teachers. Never mind. This is a beginning yarder. I love sort of pretend magazine cartoons, and this has to do with how, I grew up in Brooklyn, and I still don't really understand yards, even though I have one now. I really don't get them. So this is say hello to grass. What the hell is mulch? Rake or hoe, which is which? No, you don't want a pool. And this is sort of the truest one of all for me, like standing in the yard. It's like, so you're outside. Now what? And I think this is partly, I got this idea because one time I did go out in the backyard, and I only go out there like maybe 3 times a year. Like, I don't really know what the point of it is, but I went out and I was like standing in the backyard. My husband said that he saw me and it looked so weird, like a deer had wandered into sacks. This is not in the mood for a human interaction line. I still remember the days before these blessed sort of non-interaction things, and sometimes I would feel like I really should be a more friendly and open person, and I would say something just like, it didn't sound so weird in my head until I said, like, cereal, and then Count Chocula, it just... And then, it would be like this symphony of embarrassment. It was just, anyway, this is a desk joke, too early to begin working on and too late to do anything about. This is trivia night in apartment 8G. Who am I? Why am I here? What is the point of all this rigmarole? And 56% can't do the math and 54% won't do the math. This is self-help books for the newly dead. 5 people you should avoid in heaven, eating for eternity, and who moved my urn? And this is the little engine that coulda, woulda, shoulda. I knew I could, so why didn't I? The life, this is a Marie Kondo joke, the life-changing magic of shoving everything into a huge hefty bag and leaving it for somebody else to deal with. It's sort of the unspoken problem of getting rid of your crap. It's, and another, yeah. This is an art school joke. I guess unless you went to art school, maybe it's not really funny. But I went to art school, and it's like before I went, I just like, draw people, whatever. And then during art school, there's like this whole thing, sort of. When I went to art school, performance art, conceptual art, video art, there were these things that were very, very big. And if you did those things, then you got a lot of attention. But if you just kind of like, drawn people with a floral skirt, you just did not get very much attention or credibility, or I don't even know what the problem was. I think it was like, you're making jokes, why don't you go to clown school? So there were just a lot of, I have a friend whose daughter is this really incredible animator and cartoonist, and she made up this great word for like when you go to a gallery and there's like 3 toothbrushes leaning up against the baseboard, and then there's like a whole reason about intersectionality or something about it. She calls it pondering art. And yeah, so I never got good at that. Anyway, I don't know. Looks pretty good. This is the very first cartoon that the New Yorker ever bought from me. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this. This was in April of 1978, which was before cars. And before paper, actually. I made this paper. It's like onion skins mixed with flour. No. I wanted to be a cartoonist. I'd sort of thought about being a cartoonist pretty much since I was about 13 or so. And when I got out of art school, I started taking my portfolio around. And I was actually I was selling cartoons. I was selling cartoons to the Village Voice and also the National Lampoon, 2 places that were like dream places for me. And my secret goal was to be a cartoonist for the Village Voice because at that time they published some of my heroes like Jules Feiffer and Mark Allen Stamety and Stan Mack. And my work was sort of idiosyncratic in this way that like it didn't really fit in with underground comics, and it didn't really fit in with what I thought of as straight cartooning, like a panel with a gag line. So my parents subscribed to the New Yorker, and I loved many of the cartoons in the New Yorker. I loved, of course, Charles Addams and Ed Koren and George Booth, and there were many people whose work I loved, but I did not see myself there. I thought if I'm really, really lucky, maybe I'll be drawing for the Village Voice. Nevertheless, I thought, well, I'll try the New Yorker because they publish cartoons and they're not going to take anything anyway, so, why not? So I called up and I found out when their drop-off day was. Drop-off day is if you're a freelance illustrator, or this was back in the day when you didn't submit over the internet, because there was no internet. You would go in person and you would put all your work in a portfolio, and then you would drop it off at some outer office, and then you'd go back the next week to look for your rejection note. So I found out, and I dropped off a portfolio, and I did not know really what I was doing. I didn't know how many to submit, so I put pretty much, anything that I thought was an okay cartoon, which was about 60 cartoons, and I put them in I really did not know anything. I was 23, and I didn't even know who the editor was. I knew nothing. And I dropped it off, and I went back the next week, and I looked for the rejection note, and instead there was a note from Lee Lorenz, who was the art editor at the time of the New Yorker, and he did cartoons, he did covers, he did everything. And he said to come back and see him, which was like kind of a shockaroo. I really did not know what to expect, and I still remember very much walking down the hallway to his office. I got buzzed in and was like, well, this certainly is an unexpected turn of events. I wonder what awaits me. Maybe he'll make fun of me. I do not know. And so this outer office, I remember there were like about 15 old men. And when I say old, like when you're 23, anybody over 35 is old. And like I couldn't tell the difference between 45 and 60 or anything like that. But they were just these old guys. And they kind of looked at me, and then they kind of looked away and went back to their conversation. And I went in and saw Lee, and he pulled out this cartoon, and he said, "We're going to buy this cartoon." And I was flabbergasted, because out of all the cartoons I submitted, this was probably the most personal. This was the kind of cartoon that I draw when I'm just sitting at my drafting table and like amusing myself and making up little like funny names or syllables. I mean, I still do this. I still like make up like, you know, names of people that don't exist because their names make me laugh. You know, just, I don't know, maybe you don't do this. I don't know. Yeah, funny words. Anyway, so I made this up, and they published it, and people got very upset, and and some people canceled. Lee told me later that some people canceled their subscription, and the old guys, some of them really hated me, and one of them asked Lee if he owed my family money. But it was funny because a couple of these people I did become friends with later, and I guess I wore them down or something. This is another very early one in a quandary. The voice of reason. It's not such a big thing. Just put the galoshes on. The voice of conscience. Mom will be mad if you don't put them on. The voice of practicality. It's raining. Why don't you just wear them? The voice of Binky. Toss them out the window. And this is another very early one, and this is the Cranes, 1,022,796 West 79th Street. And this cartoon is very dear to me for one reason, in that the way it works at the New Yorker is you don't just submit one cartoon a week, and this is the same way it was like 40 years ago. You submit a group of cartoons, and then there's an art meeting, and at the time, Lee, the cartoon editor, and William Shawn, Mr. Shawn, who was the editor-in-chief of the New Yorker, they would have an art meeting, and then they would buy cartoons from the cartoonists. And then you would go in the next week, and you would meet with Lee in person, and he would show you, he would pull out, like from this portfolio on his desk, the sketch that they had bought. And these were sketches, then you would take it home and do the finish. So he pulls this out, and it's a sketch that I did, and the flag on the side of the mailbox is like sticking sort of up at the top of the mailbox, and it's like perpendicular to the mailbox. And he looks at me and he said, what is that? And I just said, like, confident as could be. I said, that's the handle. That's how you open the mailbox. And, I grew up in an apartment house. And I had never had one of these mailboxes. So I had this sort of vague idea that was wrong. And so he redrew it for me and explained the inner workings of this kind of mailbox. And I don't want to brag, but I have one of these now. And I know when I flip that flag up, I always feel like, look at you go. This is another early one, The End of Innocence. Why should I care? This is a kid taking a math test. This really did happen to me. It's like, why should I care if I pass this exam or not? It's kind of like, a thing that sometimes happens to somebody or not. This is an inside of body experience. Once again, here I am, which brings me to this dream book. This was a dream that before I even thought about doing a dream book, I started to draw up dreams that I thought were funny and post them to Instagram, because I would wake up and I'd think, this is ridiculous. Why am I dreaming about this? And just jot down a few words and then draw them up. And it was so interesting. I kind of got into it. So this is the very first one that sort of gave me an inkling that maybe I would do a book about this. My mother and her friend, a man named Bissell, had come into possession of O.J. Simpson's famous glove. This Bissell guy telephoned her to tell her of his great business idea. We can rent it out for parties. As a matter of fact, I'm wearing it right now. And my mother got kind of mad. She said, that glove belongs in a safety deposit box. And this is the cover. So then I started to kind of collect these dreams, and eventually I thought, this was about 2019, I thought, I think I might want to do a book of these, because I've always been interested in dreaming since I was a kid. These are just two quotes I really liked a lot. This is, the unconscious has a rare sense of humor. It makes delightful, ingenious puns, jokes, and comic improvisations. We are all creative geniuses in our sleep, and I do believe this. This is a quote from Harry A. Wilmer. He's a Jungian psychiatrist, has written some wonderful books about Jung, about psychiatry, about dreams. And this is a quote from Carl Jung. For me, dreams are a part of nature which harbors no intention to deceive, but expresses something the best it can. According to many people, dreams as a conversational topic should be avoided, along with aches and pains. Only shrinks are interested, and maybe not even them. Maybe it's because, as Heraclitus once wrote, and I had to put this in, as children, a child of school teachers, Heraclitus was a Greek philosopher from 500 BC who also believed that sleeping and dreaming were proof that life and death were not opposites but different points along a continuum. Proof is a strong word. I prefer inkling, but it's a very interesting thing. I think he might be onto something. As Heraclitus once wrote, the awake share a common world, but in sleep we each turn to a private world of our own. This private world aspect means that something I might learn in a dream, that I can fly by jumping in the air, going horizontal, and swimming my way down Broadway, hovering 10 feet off the ground, might not be scientifically accurate. Ever since I was a kid, I was interested not only in the content of my dreams, but in the fact that one dreamed at all. Why didn't I switch off when I fell asleep, like TV channels did at the end of their programming day? What was this mishmash of stuff that projected itself inside my head, like my own weird theater that showed nonsensical movies on a nightly basis? And this is another dream. For some reason, I was suddenly responsible for an infant girl. Also, I was not wearing any pants. And I'm like, oh, for the love of God. The baby was heavy and needed a diaper. A woman offered to lend me pants, but there were strings attached. These were my grandmother's. They're very special to me, and I'll want them back. And this dream, when you get your book, I will explain why there's this black scrawl on top of this page. So, okay, I had this Danny DeVito dream. I dreamed I was married to Danny DeVito. I like Danny DeVito. He's hilarious, but he's not someone I think about very often. In my dream, he lay with his head in my lap, gazing up at me with adoration. I thought, I'm not in love with him, but it's nice to be adored, so maybe this will work out. So this nuts thing happened last week. I was doing an interview at WNYC in New York, and the person who was on before me was Danny DeVito. And I guess somebody in his entourage had told him that I was going to be talking about my book and that he was in my book, and so he saw it. And when he came out, we were just looking at each other, and he loved it. And he gave me this hug, and we just hugged, and then he signed my book. And it says, "Oh, so nice, love, Danny DeVito." And it was just like, this is the dreamiest thing that has like ever happened. It's like, I dream about Danny DeVito, and then I meet him, and then he signs. It was just very strange. And you guys know what lucid dreams are? Lucid dreams are like when you have a dream and you're aware that you're dreaming. You're completely aware that you're dreaming, but you don't wake up. You just kind of keep going. So I had this lucid dream. I'm on the subway and my phone rings. Hello? It's my husband. And he says, "You sound weird. Why do you sound weird?" And I said, "Of course I sound weird. I'm dreaming." You have a dream and you're aware that you're dreaming. You're completely aware that you're dreaming, but you don't wake up. So I had this lucid dream. I'm on the subway. Why was I dreaming about Henry Kissinger? I do not know. I do not know. As I was walking into my dental appointment, Henry Kissinger was walking out. I sat in the chair. The dentist gave me a shot of Novocaine, which was painful. Even though it was just local anesthesia, I went into the very rarely experienced dream within a dream. I dreamed within a dream that I was in the dentist chair in Tel Aviv. You know how, like, in a dream, sometimes you know where, like, I'm in India, even though it might not look like India at all, but you sort of know you are. Anyway, then still within the dream, I woke up. My dentist said, "I'm not going to be able to work on you today. My hands are still too sore from the stress of working on Kissinger." He showed me his hands. The knuckles did indeed look sore. I told him about my Tel Aviv dream, and this was followed by a conversation about dreams versus reality. You can tell that this is reality as opposed to when I was in Tel Aviv. That's for sure. Everyone has recurring dreams. Is our brain trying to tell us something that evidently we haven't heard the last 70 times? Or is the dream manufacturing area feeling a little lazy? I have no idea, but here are some of my classics. Alone at a party. I have a terrible disease. New York City has an unusual neighborhood. A beach in Midtown. Well, I'll be. Once again, I have lost my purse. The subway is different today. And this is like one car, it's in the Alps. Too many birds, not enough cages. I have 2 parrots, so this is, not completely random. Plane crashing in distance. My legs don't work. There's actually a physiological reason for that, which I go into later in the book. And pregnant and old. This is not a happy dream. Trust me. This will not end well. And here are some more. Tooth issues. Tooth loss dreams are very common and have been written about since people started to write about dreams. They've been said to signify everything from loss of power, sexual anxiety, major life changes coming, problems with communication, vanity and embarrassment, to tooth pain while sleeping. Can't find hotel room. And this is a classic that everybody I know has had. You're back in high school and there's a crisis. You can't find, you're taking a test and you don't know, or you can't find the room, or you don't know your schedule. And we just have this, why? A lot of times in dreams, in this particular dream, I'll say, I graduated from high school. It's like, I don't even have to worry about it. Then, a week later, I'll have the dream again. It's ridiculous. And this was somewhere west of 11th Avenue. You suddenly enter an area that looks like the Sahara Desert. The sand is very fine, sort of pinkish orange. There are lots of dunes and no plants. One fun thing, in the sand, there are tons of conch shells. Some of them are a little chipped, though. When I was a child, I had a lot of fears, or as my supremely anxious father referred to his fears, concerns. Diseases were a big one. Also fires, especially those that could start within apartment walls. This had happened to Helen Keller. I learned this from, Scholastic Book Services. I read the Helen Keller book, and she put her hand on her bedroom wall, and it was hot. And, here's the thing. I didn't know there was anything inside of the walls. And now I knew there were wires that could burst into flame. For an anxious child, this is not information that you need. I I also had a lot of nightmares. From the ages of around 7 to 9, before I fell asleep, I insisted that my mother recite to me what we used to call the 4 things. 1, you will never go blind or cross-eyed. This was a big phobia. You will never lose any of your permanent teeth. I used to constantly check them to see if they were loose or not. You will not have any nightmares. Didn't always work, but had to be said anyway. And I will stay awake until you're fast asleep. I still have nightmares now and then, but as an adult, I find them as interesting as I find them distressing. Recently, I dreamed about a horrible creature called a Pringle. Like the chip, yes, like the chip. A Pringle looked like a cross between a weasel and a naked mole rat, and it was chasing me. The thing about Pringles is, if you see one in your house, you have to leave and never come back. They are a very bad omen. My husband, whom I had accidentally awakened, said I was waving my arms around like a marionette. The minute I woke up, I jotted down some details. And I included this because, I don't remember all of my dreams unless I jot something down or, tell my husband because they're so ephemeral. They just, if you don't do that, they just disappear. But that's kind of what it looked like. It was like this, this is to save humanity. There was a water shortage on Earth. But I had a genetic defect where I made tons of saliva. I kept people alive by drooling into their mouths. Everyone was grossed out, but it was either take my drool or die. I'm sorry, your choice. Elizabeth Taylor, another person I don't think about. Why? Why was she in my dream? I learned that Elizabeth Taylor always traveled with her own stove when she went on tour. Amazingly, it looked exactly like the tiny stove in my apartment in New York. I don't know if any of you have ever lived in an old apartment in New York where there are these stoves. They're halfway between a stove that you would see in a kindergarten playhouse and a regular normal stove. There are just these weird little 4-burner stoves. Anyway, because I'm a cartoonist, sometimes I have cartoon dreams. I'm sure that podiatrists probably have Bunyan dreams. I don't know. Anyway, I once dreamed a couplet about a man named Orny L. When I woke up, I wrote it down. Something, something, Orny L. When he got mad, he'd ring a bell. I added a couple of lines, and that week submitted it to the New Yorker as a cartoon, which they rejected. But it went, here's a story I'd like to tell about the poet, Orny L. When he got mad, he'd ring a bell. I didn't know him very well. Yeah. Oh, here's another one. This is a cartoon idea, a very specific yet idiotic idea that came to me within a dream. And I still remember that in the dream, I thought this was the funniest idea anybody had ever had. I mean, this is right out of that Harry Wilmer quote where our dreaming brain loves puns. It loves these kind of weird jokes. And I'm thinking, this is the funniest idea anyone has ever had. I'd better draw it up right away. And it's swan dancing. It's swans square dancing. It's not my fault, I swear. This was Art Envy Dream, and this was published. The New Yorker actually did buy this one. I was with some cartoonist friends. We were looking at comic books, not superheroes, more modern ones. The one I was reading was about a red dog, a dog-like creature named Question. And yes, I know about Clifford the Big Red Dog, but this was different. He was made of simple geometric shapes, and this comic was wordless. Question mostly walked, but sometimes he hovered in the air. This was the greatest comic I'd ever seen. As a matter of fact, I was extremely envious of the artist who created it. I felt myself start to wake up, and I was like, yeah, I'm still and then it was kind of a relief to find out this was just a dream. And this was another one that the New Yorker actually did buy. which was just the strangest dream. Last night, I dreamed about shopping for new bed slippers. I tried on some big fluffy ones, but I didn't like them. Then I tried on a pair of cute green slippers, which I realized could double as penny loafers, but I would have to put insoles in them because they had no arch support. And the store did not sell arch support insoles, but I bought them anyway. My credit card was square rather than rectangular, and it had a picture of a wheat field on it. The lady wasn't sure the machine would take it, but it did. When the machine took the card, it made a happy little chime. The end. I don't know. According to the Kabbalah, the dream state is a sort of refresher or re-energizer for the soul. When we are awake, we are aware of time, but when we are dreaming, we're not only free of time, but also free of the limitations of motion. The Kabbalah also believes in the predictive nature of dreams, perhaps because when we dream, we are free from the linear, consecutive nature of the way we experience time in our waking lives. And maybe while we're in that state, we can get a glimpse of the future. Perhaps personally, I wouldn't bet the farm on it, but it's interesting to think about. Who knows? The Kabbalah says our soul is comprised of 60 parts. I don't know how they came up with that number. When we sleep and dream, 59 parts of our soul leave our bodies. The final part remains to make sure we keep breathing and so forth. Good idea. This was another dream idea that I read about the Baku. According to the Japanese legend, the Baku is a creature that eats bad dreams. It has an elephant's trunk, rhinoceros eyes, an oxtail, and tiger paws. A child in Japan who was having a nightmare would wake up and say 3 times, "Baku-san, come eat my dream." Then hopefully all would be well and the kid would go back to sleep. However, you didn't want to call on him too frequently. If eating the nightmare didn't satisfy him, it would eat the summoner's hopes and desires. Not good. Haruki Murakami once said, "For me, writing a novel is like having a dream. Writing a novel lets me intentionally dream while I'm awake." Working on my weekly group of cartoons for the New Yorker sometimes feels dreamish, especially when it's going well. I sit at my drawing table for hours, thinking, doodling, jotting down ideas that might become cartoons on a nearby scrap of paper. At the end of the workday, the scraps containing these half-baked ideas go into my idea box. When I look at them later, some ideas gel into cartoons, but many do not. And these are just a few from my idea box. Salad bar from 1066. Turkey in therapy. Sometimes it's just a single word, podiatrist. And periodically, I toss a bunch into the garbage. When one of my kids was around 11, he looked into my studio and saw me staring slack-jawed at a blank piece of paper. He said, "Mom, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm thinking." And letting your thoughts take you where they will, thinking is a lot like dreaming. Perhaps the reason we dream is not just one thing. Maybe it's more of a combo pack, which form a pie chart. I read a lot of stuff while I was putting this book together, but I didn't want it to be this, heavy-duty book on why we dream, because really, I think the jury is still out, but cartoonists love pie charts, and I do too. So I just have to tell you one funny thing. One time I was with a group of cartoonists and we were at some sort of business meeting with a group of people who were going to reprint cartoons and, I don't know, put them on jigsaw puzzles or whatever. And they did this PowerPoint. The business people, we were in this conference room and the business people had a PowerPoint that they presented to us. And when the pie chart came up, everybody was like, "Oh my God, it's a pie chart." Like a real one, and this is just so meta. So this is a pie chart of my own dream theory. 25% connection to personal unconscious which would be kind of Freudian. He Freud believed that dreams were, he called it the royal road to the unconscious. 25% connection to the collective unconscious, which is more Jungian. He had a theory of archetypes, that he believed that everybody in the world shared the same archetypes, and I'm not 100% behind that, but I like that idea that there's some level on where we all connect. 12.5% info sorting and pruning. That's a scientific theory. It's a real one. 12.5% helps you stay in sleep mode while your body does body things. 12.5% rehearsals for unexpected situations. And 12.5% creative problem solving. So I just thought I would switch topics and end up with, this is I don't know, an old magazine I had, and I periodically I get obsessed with certain like odd hobbies. I don't know what this woman is doing there. I think there's like Queen Elizabeth in wax at the bottom there, and she's doing some other wax things that I don't fully understand, but you know, more power to her. It looks good. I've gotten sort of gone through different phases of being obsessed with making pisanki eggs, and this is a grid of them. I learned the traditional technique, which involves drawing on the egg with melted wax, and working in wherever you put the wax, the color is not going to go. So you're sort of basically thinking in the negative, which comes very easily to me. I've made, this is just a small selection of them. I really got sort of obsessed with it. So you melt the wax and you start with the lightest color, like white, and then you work your way to black or dark blue, whatever your darkest color is. And it's very, very persnickety and obsessive and fun for me. These are some close-ups of, that's the last one is the top of the egg. So you can see. Here's another one. I think the color is what really gets to me. I just love the colors that you get with these Ukrainian Easter. It's a Ukrainian technique, and I love the Ukrainian Easter egg dyes. And this one was just different shades of blue, and sort of a nighttime one. Yeah, I don't know, this dinosaur at a barber shop, I guess. I also got like really obsessed with rug hooking, and this is not latch hook rugs or any of that. This is actually, it's like what not pilgrims, what do they call them? Pioneer people? Pioneer pilgrims, I don't know. Those people from the olden days when you didn't just go to Zara and wear a shirt one time and throw it in the garbage. Every piece of clothing was so valuable that when something wore out, it was generally women who tore the fabric into strips or cut if they were lucky enough to have a scissor, cut the fabric into strips, and then they would weave it into burlap and make these rugs. I use wool, which I cut into strips, and then here's another one of these rugs. You can kind of see, and the pressure of the loops, because it's woven very tightly, is what keeps the strips from falling out. But again, it's a color thing that I really like. And I'm going to show some embroideries. During the pandemic, I got like super obsessed with hand embroidery. This started, I had this book of fabric samples, you know, like from an upholstery store or one of those places, or, you know, places where they make fabric, you know, for couches or whatever. And periodically they throw a bunch of them away. So I got them, and I looked at this fabric, and I just thought, you know, oh my God, it's like, I just have to tweak it a little bit, and it's the coronavirus. So that's what I did. This was the first one I did in the series. Then sometime later, it was this fabric that had this white sort of crossing thing on it, and I looked at it for a long time, and then I realized, oh, it's a window. And I put this person behind it, and it wound up being a cover for the New Yorker. But I have to tell you a funny thing about it. When I did it, well, first of all, you can see it's cropped. But the other thing is that when I did it, her eyes had no eyeballs in them. I guess it was, it was a sort of look of emptiness and, fear, maybe. But David Remnick, who's the editor of the magazine, was a little too creeped out by it. So there, she has eyes now. This was another cover I did for the New Yorker, another embroidery cover. It was the issue. It was a tech issue that fell on the week of Mother's Day. So, of course, I had to do a motherboard, which was really fun just to look at. I love technical diagrams that I have no idea what they are. So that was, I've been asked, did you use like an app? And it was like, no, I prefer things that are like really painstaking and take forever because I have no life. And this is insomnia. You can see what the fabric is. It's kind of these swirls, but that's what this is. This one is just some plant guys, I guess. So the only thing that you can see what was printed, and then I added the guys and the faces and the stuff in the background, the mountains or whatever they are. This is a "Don't Make Me Go Outside." There's like nothing worse to me than like I'm with friends or something and somebody says, "Let's eat outside." And I'm like, oh, could you just shut up, please? This is I like this one. Something about the blue, the squares. It reminded me of like the shadows on the street when you're walking in the city, the way the shadows fall on the buildings. And this is just a street. I don't know. I picture it in the West 30s, kind of, but probably because there's that. I don't know if any of you know there's a wonderful magic store called Tannen's. My son was into magic for a while. It was a great place. And this is two birds, and this is I discovered that the beads are kind of a fun addition. So that. And that's the back, which is pure madness, because I really don't care what the back looks like. I actually kind of like that it just looks like, everybody's sane. No, they're not. Things are going really well. Nope, it's all falling apart. And this is on just plain muslin. This is a quote that I absolutely love. I think it's, one of the truer words were never spoken. When a writer is born into a family, the family is finished. And and I'm going to end up with these 3 slides. The vain but realistic queen. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who, if she lost 10 pounds and had her eyes and her neck done and had the right haircut, could in her age group be the fairest one of all? and a last tombstone joke. Tuned in, turned on, dropped out, dropped in, worked out, saved up, dropped dead. And that is it. Oh, wonderful.
What's your idea of the most ideal trick-or-treat candy?
Oh, most ideal trick-or-treat candy. I don't know, anything chocolate, I guess? Yeah, not a box of raisins. That's like for people you hate, I hate your costume. Here, take these potatoes and water. That's... there are some weird... You've seen that at the supermarket, potatoes and water in a can. I can't believe that they're like any less expensive than anyway, that's for another conversation. Hi.
What is your favorite inanimate object you've ever drawn?
Oh, favorite inanimate object. I love drawing interiors. It's hard to select one. I love lamps. I really love lamps, actually. I like couches. I like coffee tables. I like coffee tables with crap on them. Like remotes are funny. I like the coffee table is good because then you can put like a bowl and then put candy in the bowl and like just weird. To me, a nightmare is, well, one time I did this children's book. That the children's book was really good, but I was probably the wrong person for it because it took place in the woods, and I was sort of faking my way through it for a while. But then came a spread, like when they were inside of their like cave or something in the woods, I could sort of like I could make that like homey and good. But then once like there was a spread that was like just completely in the woods, and it was just got worse and worse. It was like, okay, what's in the woods? I know there's trees. So like I put some trees, and it would just be like, no. And I think, what's on the floor? Okay, there's like branches, I think some leaves and rocks, pine cone, and it was just got worse. It was torture. But drawing like an interior, I can draw living rooms, couches, kitchens, all that stuff. I just, so yeah, I guess my favorite inanimate thing would be maybe lamps the best, but anything really in a living room. They're about like 12 by 12, 12 by 14, depending on the fabric sample. Inches, 12 by 14 inches. Yeah, not feet, Jesus Christ. Yeah.
I heard that you have 2 birds. I also have 2 birds, and the dream that they are multiplying and I don't have any cages to put them in is one I also get. So apparently,
really? Oh my
that's
God,
a
that's so
bird person
funny.
dream. I'm just curious, have you always been a bird person? And like, what made you decide to get birds? Because I'm always curious and meeting other bird people.
Yeah. I have always been a bird person, partly because, as I've said before, I grew up in an apartment, and a parakeet was as high on the animal pet ladder as I was allowed to climb, and that took a lot of doing, a lot of pressure, a lot of just like, I need a parakeet, I will die without a parakeet, because I had goldfish, and that was just not cutting. Like, when the goldfish died, I didn't care, This sounds cruel. It was just like, you don't play with a goldfish, but a parakeet, so I grew up with parakeets. And weirdly, for different reasons, my husband also grew up with parakeets. So, like, we bonded over that. And we also bonded over David Lynch, because our first date was Eraserhead. So yeah, parakeets and Eraserhead, that, sealed the deal pretty much. But yeah. I don't know. I think it's one of those things where I'm so close to it that I'm sure that it has a big effect on my sensibility, because I really love the city so much, and it was very hard to leave it, and I go there whenever I get a chance, and I now have a friend of mine calls it a pomme de terre, which is pretty much what it is. Where I have that little itsy bitsy stove. But which is better than my old apartment, which didn't have a stove. I cooked on a hot plate for 9 years. I got kind of good at it. But yeah, I think, I don't know. I think I'm too close to it to know exactly. Should we, that's it. All right, thank you very much. Thanks.